Welcome to Politely Pushy. I'm your host, as always, Eric Chummy. Eric Chummy. Politely Pushy. Politely Pushy. I'm Eric Chummy, and this is Politely Pushy. Welcome to Politely Pushy, folks. I'm your host, as always, Eric Chummy. Today we're talking about GEO, or AEO, as some like to call it. It's the modern day 21st century equivalent of SEO. And I'm here with Jen Devine, who works with BoSpar in a number of capacities, helping make great websites, video content, online, material for companies that are looking to expand their public relations, expand their media footprint, and get the world to understand who they are and what they do. And we've been talking off air a lot more recently about the SEO thing almost doesn't matter anymore. Now it's what is the Chat GPT engine think about how your website works, or what do they think about what your company does? And that's really changed how you've had to do business and how you've had to work with clients. So Jennifer, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Eric. Glad to be here.
When did it all change? Because we know ChatGPT has been out about 3 years now, but when was it like, oh, we need to completely change how we're making websites, how we're putting material out there?
It was a slow burn, so to speak. But we've really seen a large shift in behavior this past year, where users are more widely adopting these platforms and integrating them into their search behaviors. So rather than going straight to a Google or a Bing, they're firing up ChatGPT or Claude and entering their queries and searches and taking the content and responses that come back into consideration in their decision-making process. So, we knew it was something that was, and we adopted a lot of tools, AI tools in our own work and deliverables prior to that, but really the adoption got on our radar early this year.
And is there a difference between GEO, AEO? Like, to be honest, I only started hearing about these terms in just the last few weeks, really, like last couple of months. And I'm still feel like I'm way catching up on this stuff, right? Because I use AI tools all the time now, but I don't know what the proper lingo is anymore. So what are we all saying? What do we say to sound like we're current?
Well, it was up for debate for quite some time, and I don't think it's a debate that's quite settled yet. A lot of the larger agencies started using GEO and put a stake out there for generative engine optimization. You do come across answer engine optimization, or AEO, as well. The delineation between the two is a bit blurry, but often you will hear people say the answer engine optimization is in browser. So the Google AI overviews and those sorts of things that you're seeing, the AI within the browser searches. And then the generative engine is when you're searching in platform, so directly in a Chat GPT or directly in DeepSeek or what have you. Now, is it, like I said, is it final? No, I think we might see some changes that come over time, but right now those are the terms that are highly used.
There's a great post on Reddit, just in the digital marketing section 3 months ago, not very long ago, digital marketing on Reddit. Somebody says, SEO is old news? ? Right now there's AIO, GEO, AEO, WTF is going on. Right. So it's interesting to see all of a sudden, it just felt like we got into the summer here and people got barreled over.
LLMO was out there for a while and is still, these are terms, depending on if you're in the industry or out of the industry. Marketing professionals are getting more familiar and using these terms. But like I said, lots of room for change still to happen. AIEO, who knows where it's going to land, but right now we seem to be centralizing on GEO and AEO. Of course, partnered with SEO, because SEO is still important. It hasn't gone away, and they're very complementary to each other. So that's something that I'm always stressing with clients is, this isn't a complete do-over. It's not that SEO is dead. Really, it is another consideration in search behavior and findability online.
So how did the change happen? Was it you going to clients and saying, we are going to design your site differently now? Or was it clients coming to you and saying, we want you to design it differently?
Well, I think AI and the changes that it's brought on through customer behavior has been on a lot of people's radar, our clients included. So it's been a combination of both of those types of scenarios where we've set up meetings with our clients just as a touch base. Say, hey, is this on your radar? What have you been doing? If it's not on your radar, how can we help? Because it's important that you're aware of and shifting your focus and or including these types of considerations in your strategies. So a large variance across the board. Some are like, yeah, I know it's coming. I've got a lot on my plate. I've been trying not to have to consider it, but I know I have to. And then others who are on top of it and working with current vendors or partners or in deep consideration, how do we accommodate this in our strategies moving forward?
How does it even work though? Like, we understood before, Google has their algorithm and it's a little bit of a black box, but we knew if you had good content, there were certain ways of optimizing the pickup there. But now it's harder to know, well, what are these models doing? How fresh is their information? What are they looking at? What are they valuing? What is their equivalent of a page rank, for example, in terms of the importance of the content, because then they're just making up answers. It's not consistent, right? Before it was your ranking, but you could get people to your page. Now people aren't coming to your page and they might make up different answers each time someone asks the same query.
Yeah, and with SEO, you were more in control of if you got to that first page, or if you your site was indexed and started ranking highly, at least what it was showing was pulled directly from your own content. Whereas with the AI engines, they are formulating responses based on different sources. So they have a core base of knowledge that is consistent, and that is the content that they learn from. And then they have in-session capability where when the user is querying, they can access real-time websites that then are pulled in for consideration, but not a direct regurgitation. It is inputted into the formulation of the response that comes back. So a lot of the same principles that are good practice for SEO are good practice for GEO and AEO as well. Great content, structured in a way that's easily read, easily consumed by humans, so that these AI engines can get to it quickly and understand the structure of it and the type of content that it is. In-session queries, when it's out grabbing information, it's going to grab from those top-ranked sites and highly credible sources as well. We have determined in our research and through through a lot of the reading that we're doing as well, that each platform kind of has its own flavor and own preferences for where it's citing or sourcing the information that it's getting in session. So we want to be on top of that and aware of where it's pulling its sources. But if you're following best practices, great content, engaging content that's adding value, that's structured and easily digested from that perspective, your schemas are there, then you're going to be in good shape, and all of that kind of works together. That's why I was saying SEO, AEO, and GEO are still all on the playground.
What did you have to do to learn the skills? So it's not like there's a class that you're taking, right? You're actively working with clients, you're doing all this. How did you learn, okay, this is what we need to do differently now?
Well, lots and lots of reading, no different than the kinds of behaviors that we have in place around the algorithm changes that you mentioned with Google. You'd get a lot of activity, and a lot of it was interpretation. So you'd run some tests, across the different platforms, what could it be that's influencing the information that's being pulled in and considered in the responses. So, looking at the sources, the preferences, reading a lot of the industry articles, and looking to those experts as well, who are all very curious and interested in what's going on and how does this impact the work and the strategies that they're putting in place.
Can you tell, as you surf the web, can you tell if there are sites that, oh, they've definitely started to optimize for AI engines now? Like, can you see in how they're designed or set up or organized or what content they're presenting?
Probably not as obviously as a poorly optimized SEO site, where you get a human can spot that stuff right away, where the keyword density is overloaded, the structures of the site feel awkward, and it feels like it's more for a bot or a scraper than it is for a human. Again, when content is done really well, it should be human first. And the engines look for a lot of the same things that humans look for. In best practice in UX design is allow the user to get deeper into content if they want to. Provide the summaries, quick bullet points, and they can skim and scan it and then choose to go deeper if they want to download that PDF. It's very similar for the AI platform. So when you're experiencing a site, if it's well done and they're considering the content that they want to be digested and formulated into the responses, you're not really going to see that. But it's not all about the site itself. So much more of what we're seeing with GEO and AEO is about that third-party content, and can they cite and source third-party content that helps them validate the response that they're going to be getting for accuracy. So that's why it plays into a lot of the media and PR strategies that we put forward for our clients.
Yeah. So talk more about that. Talk about how that's all related, like the PR and media strategies, how it relates to the content that you're doing, third-party validation. What's an example of a really coordinated effort that you've seen do a good job in the past few months?
Yeah, I mean, really, a great example of the importance of this work was when RealSense launched, spun out of Intel. So at the beginning of that, an unfortunate situation where many moons ago, there was a product line within RealSense that had been discontinued. And unfortunately, somebody misinterpreted that RealSense itself, the unit within or the division within Intel, had been discontinued or closed down. So when we were,
let's just clarify something listening. So Intel said they were shutting down a product, but people got confused and thought they were shutting down an entire division. And now that division, a few years later, is the one that they're trying to spin out.
Yes, okay. Absolutely, exactly. That's exactly it. And unfortunately, when we started querying within the engines, what are we dealing with here? Of course, on Reddit, we're saying, what's the, what is the understanding out there as we're forming our strategy for the launch? And we found that, a lot of individuals believed that Intel RealSense was no longer. And when we went into the AI platforms, ChatGPT specifically was a hard one to crack, is that it believed, yes, I know what Intel RealSense is, but it's no longer operating. And the strategy behind that is like, we have to launch a company that a lot of people, and this main AI platform that people are heavily using to source their information, is giving inaccurate feedback. So we had to come up with a strategy for the launch that would help address that. And to formulate that strategy, we did a lot of comparative querying and analysis to find out first of all, where the inaccuracy was coming from. We were able to pinpoint the source of that, include that in that individual, reach out to them and say, hey, listen, RealSense is launching out, spinning out of Intel, and we would like to include you in some of the information, so they wrote an article like RealSense was dead. Thank God it's not dead anymore, and bring that individual into the conversation, so that when the launch went out, the platforms were able to access that content and pull that into its responses. It's like, yeah, maybe maybe that was part of what happened in the past, but now there's a correction, and actually identify, oh, hey, there was a misunderstanding. That is now corrected, and we've seen, it's an ongoing battle. These platforms are changing a lot, but we have seen a shift. It is now aware of the spin out and the independence of RealSense, but we are still seeing a lot of combination of the brands together, where we're seeing Intel RealSense versus RealSense, the independent organization that they now are.
That's fascinating. You can imagine that's going to be a little bit of an ongoing project here going forward, to make sure that they eventually get every engine, search, and AI to fully understand what they are now.
Yeah. And it's ongoing. Like you had mentioned with the algorithms, these platforms change, they update, and they do it very rapidly. So staying on top of that and continuing to audit and be aware of what the shifts might be helps inform our strategies with the clients, for sure.
So if I'm, let's say, a pre-IPO SaaS, CEO or founder, what is the minimum viable, let's say minimum viable GEO, AEO? Like what would they need minimally that you'd want to ship in a website refresh this quarter, let's say before the end of the year?
Minimum, a really well formatted and thought out about page.
About page. Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty basic. It's not anything that is, but it's often an afterthought. Oh, nobody cares about our about page. Nobody really looks at it. I'll tell you from the masses of sites that we look at the analytics, the about page, the team page are often the most visited. And it is so important for these AI platforms. It is the first page that it will go to look through. Who is the leadership team? What was the year of founding? What are the main values, products, services, and offerings of the organization? It will then branch out from there and validate. But if a site doesn't have a well thought out about page and about section, it's left to determine that information on its own from other sources.
Because it's funny that you mentioned that, because I was going to ask you, what are the other important parts of a page that matter? And then you said, about is number one, because, there's the FAQ, maybe there's a product page, there's a pricing page, there's a leadership page, but you think about is the number one.
Well, for the basics, absolutely. To understand the presence and have an accurate summary of an organization, that about page is really, really important. Structured data, and that's what you're touching on with the FAQs, product data, if you are an e-commerce site, making sure that you have the proper schema and you have the depth of content in that Q&A response format is a great way to help these engines digest and understand more about the company and get answers to the types of questions that people are querying about within the platforms.
What about thought leadership, right? We talk so much with companies about putting out your content, putting out your own content, right? You're writing your articles, your blog posts. How much of that matters?
It really matters when you are considering their appetite for expertise and expert quotes. So, for example, if you can get, put forward as an expert in a certain space, and media will reach out for you for input or information or insight about a specific happening or an occurrence, having that quote placed, even if the full article isn't about you, but having the quote placed from an individual within the organization will often be highly cited and brought in and considered within the responses as well.
What about, it's so good to hear these details, right, of what has to happen. How do you get the real world proof, right? Customers, some other kind of validation so that engines trust you, right? So it's not just some, many sites, you click on a site and you realize this is just such a nonsense, fake, made up site that only exists to get on
Yeah,
Google. So how do you get that proof, right? To make sure
right.
that that's real?
Yeah. So get the proof that the recommendations are real. Is that what you mean,
Yeah, that
Eric?
the company's real, the product's real, the people
Yeah.
are real, the leadership's real, the
Yeah.
articles are real.
Yeah, we're finding a lot of reliance and a lot of site and sources are awards. So again, that third party content. If you have leadership awards or recognition within your space or recognition from specific campaigns, anything like that, that's third party where you've received that recognition is very important. As well as listings that, Crunchbase, what are your profiles? There's consistency within what's showing up within the profiles that you have set up. We have seen a lot of, Glassdoor information and LinkedIn, depending on the platform. So they each have their own flavor and preferences, but ensuring consistency across the areas where your organization is showing up is very, very important so that it can verify and know that this information is true.
What about, let's say a company gets a top tier placement, they get a big tier one story, right? What should they do with that so that somehow it helps them in the AI world? Like how do they promote that or highlight that or make sure that it is really truly associated with them?
Yeah, and a lot of this is going to be familiar from the SEO world, where you're looking at, can you get a backlink? Top tier, probably not. They tend not to do a backlink into the owned asset or the website, but getting mention of that onto your own website, linking to the article and making those connections, so that, again, going back to, it needs to be easy because like humans, you want to be able to get the information quickly and sort of digest and read the connections very quickly to what you need to access. The AI platforms are the same, getting linked to your site, making that connection so that they can build the content and see the relationships between them, is really, really important. So promoting it on your socials, getting it on your website, and using that to your advantage. So that connection is really, really clear is really where we would say, use it, right? If you've got it, use it.
Is there anything else formatting wise that matters? Like, doing more with tables, doing more with alternate text on images, things like that to help get the content across?
Yeah. So making sure that you have the metadata and alt text on back to the old school practices for SEO. It's all really, really important because, again, it builds out the understanding and connection within what's being said, what's being made available to the engine so that it can access and determine, is this related or not.
And then hallucinations, how do you prevent that? Is it disclaimers, certain links, certain page patterns? How do you reduce misquotes?
Well, the hallucinations, and these platforms and the answer engines love to have answers. So they do not like not being able to find the information. And that's when we find they tend to want to make things up, because first and foremost, they want to have an answer. If they can't find the answer, they will make up an answer. So ensuring that information is consistent and accurate and available across the board in many ways is the best way to help stop that from happening. We in a lot of our searches and research that we were doing, it was making up, specific to BoSpar. Who were the founders of BoSpar? Curtis always showed up. But randomly there'd be just other names. The CTO of BoSpar, some person that didn't exist. So we needed to make sure that, and that's when we started seeing some of the initiative around adding some more information to the team pages and location pages on the site. So there's just more clarity and easier for the engines to source that information and know that it's accurate.
And then how long does it take to see the work, the effort? How long does it take to see it pay off where, hey, now when you ask that question again, real sense is correctly described or Both Bar leadership is correctly described? Because it's not going to be immediate. It's not going to be same day, same week, same month.
No, well, part of it is about how often the platforms update their core knowledge base. And part of it is making sure that new content is indexed back to that traditional SEO search optimization world, so that it is accessible and the information that they're accessing in session for the queries is indexed and ranking. So it's a combination. We don't have an exact timing on it. We know that it can take, we have tools in our toolkit to ask Google to more quickly index new pages and those sorts of things. But the rest of it, that core learning database, just depends on how often the platforms are updating the core information.
So fascinating. What else do you see in terms of advice when you're having conversations with clients? What are the most typical, 3 things? Hey, you definitely got to do this, or the 3 mistakes that you see a lot of companies make. What's a very common playbook in terms of things that they need to do and things that they're really screwing up?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about the About page. There are a lot of big players out there that I think assume everyone knows our details and our information, and so the About page is just a real quick couple of paragraphs, not important details. So the About page, again, not putting a time, effort, or attention into that presence on your main site. The profile pages that might have been spun up eons ago that weren't maintained for accuracy. They might be listing old team members, even old executives, old board members. We've seen a lot of that information get pulled in. It's hard to keep on top of all of those things. So even an individual might have spun up something a couple of years ago that might not even be with the company anymore, but here is a source that is getting pulled in for inaccuracies in the responses that we're seeing. So doing a scrub across profiles, making sure those are accurate. If you don't have access, get access to them and get them cleaned up. The About page. And then really not having, proper schema on the website for your organization, the FAQs, the type of information, lack of structure within the data schema and the schema itself that you have on your website.
It's a lot to do. I'm sure they're keeping you busy.
Yeah, and a lot of it right now is reassuring people that if you've been following best practices and SEO's been on your radar, then you're in pretty good shape. Now there's a bit more that you need to be taking into consideration, but not to panic. These can be layered on and addressed in a planful manner. That this isn't anything to be panicked about. There is some clarity and help and assistance that we can put forward for them.
Do you find that you have to completely start the website over from scratch, or do you tweak? Let's say someone made a site with someone else. Now they're coming to you as they want to get better visibility and all this stuff. Do you go into that code and look at it and think, oh my gosh, this is so problematically set up that we need to start this thing all over again? Or can you fix what's there?
That would, less so from a GEO perspective, more from a site performance, usability, UX perspective, is that we might be coming back and saying, this site is just really going to need a lot more help. It'll be faster for us to clean this up and start from scratch. If it's well done and there just wasn't attention paid to priming for SEO or content structures thinking about how we are actually creating content that's adding value and deeper understanding to for our audience, to the services and offerings that we have, then we can work within the existing platform. Oftentimes, building a website is a very large expense for an organization, and there's been more than a handful of clients that have come that we've spent a lot of our budget is already spent on redesigning, but we're finding that performance wise or what have you, it's not doing well, and we can usually work with that.
And then I guess lastly, since we're talking about it, what about all the AI tools that say, well, you don't need to hire Jennifer. The AI is going to make the website, or the AI is going to write the code, right? What if we cut you out altogether and just have an AI make a site that is designed for AI to read it?
Yeah, well, not quite there yet, thank goodness. We do use a lot of AI tools, but we find that no matter how we're employing those tools, there's still human touch and human analysis and insights that are required to really make them get them to a place where things need to be. We have seen that before. We've been up against that for a very long time, even with the site builder sites, the Wixes and they're great to a degree. But what we find is our clients, you'll hit the wall way too fast, as there's always a degree of customization or level of branding, visual experience, user experience that can't be attained within those platforms. So, and it's the same thing with AI. It won't get you to where you need to be using just tools, because there's expertise and a view into user behaviors and things that just need to be considered when you're working at that higher level and you have a sophisticated audience that you're connecting with.
Fascinating. Jennifer, I appreciate the time. Thank you so much for giving me a little explainer here on the future of what's going on with how a lot of these sites are being made and what that's going to mean for content, how it all relates.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Eric. I really enjoyed it, and I appreciate your time as well.
Thank you to my guest, and thanks for listening. Subscribe to get the latest episodes each week, and we'll see you next time.